talking about a region in a homogeneous term does not really apply. So I think that each country is specific. I think that the main challenges we face, I think, are around five main topics. The first has to do with regulation. I think that most of the countries, actually 80% of Asian countries, and that's true also for Southeast Asia, have committed to net to carbon neutrality by 2050, some by 2060, but still all have commitments, all have national determined contributions by 2030 of renewables. But I think that somehow we are lacking in some of these countries in having a simple and predictable regulatory framework that allows investors to determine the outcome and a clear process to do the development. And I think that part also in terms of long-term pricing signals that come are still lacking. The second has to do with grid investments, making sure that the grids are ready, equipped, and being invested at the correct pace. That, for example, risks such as the ability to interconnect or the curtailment risk that is expected to be managed. I think that the third has to do with permitting speed and timeliness. So you might have more complex regulations or understaffed bodies that make permitting process too long and sometimes even longer than the construction of the assets themselves. And I think that last but not the least, social acceptance and community engagement. So in spite of checking other boxes, sometimes I think that private, but also governments need to engage on a more transparent process and involve communities from earlier on so that there are no later blockages and constraints to the development. Aligned with that, also the environmental impact, making sure that the community understands what's being done, studied, and delivered to mitigate that. So the countries within the region that are delivering on all these five key success factors, I think are delivering faster megawatts. So APAC is definitely a region that we entered at scale in 2022. Looking into the huge potential of the region, it's of course now over 50% of electricity demand worldwide and the one that is growing the most. So in terms of renewables, we'll have the highest deployments moving forward for sure. So we have right now 1.2 gigawatt of operating assets in APAC. We expect to reach up to 5 gigawatts peak by 2030. We are currently focusing on around Australia, Japan, focusing on utility scale projects, Singapore, Taiwan, and China, focusing on distributed generation. And we have our largest solar operating asset in Vietnam. We're also looking into optionality to grow further our presence there. So I believe that on these markets and with our ambition, we can deliver on the expected ambition. On top of this, we are working with the Singapore government and the Indonesian government on the cross-border interconnection project that I think can also be a huge project for us up to the end of the decade. In terms of the outlook for the energy market, I think what we need to focus now, I think that the growth in renewables will be there. Solar and wind are definitely not the only generation that is required to deliver on the energy transition, but is one of the biggest, and actually solar is one of the ones that is most accelerating and will most contribute to this. So I think that what we need to deliver is a sustainable generation, a lot of renewables, but that is also affordable in the long term. And for this, we sometimes point the finger to renewables, but there are cases in Europe that basically prove that the renewable mix can bring more competitive sourcing in terms of cost, but also it can create further independence from fossil fuel commodity price volatility and so on. We should not forget is that grid investment and being able to enable wind and other generation is critical to maintain the resilience of the system, the energy system, and to maintain its price competitiveness. So I think that it's required to have an integrated management of the energy transition and of course not being mono vectorial in any way, be it with renewables, be it with fossil fuels, be it the grid, but how do we combine all to achieve the greenest possible future at the lowest possible cost?